Are the Cowboys in trouble? Now, to me, the Cowboys were in trouble before the James Washington injury. Let's make this very clear. If you have to ask yourself, are you in trouble, based upon a player who has a career 1,600 yards over 4 years, if you have to ask yourself, are you in trouble based upon that player being injured, then you were already in trouble before the injury. I started to assess things this offseason, Joy, and I realized, wait a second, receivers might be more valuable than we typically have thought they are. Not just a receiver, but receivers, plural. You think about the Super Bowl this past year, there were receivers that were beasts. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins for the Bengals. Then on the other side, Odell Beckham, Cooper Kupp. Both of those teams had two receivers. You think about last year's Super Bowl, receivers. You had Patrick Mahomes having Travis Kelce, having Tyreek Hill, receivers, plural. Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans. What I've learned over the last few years of football, even if you look at George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, in this year's conference championship, teams need two receivers to make noise. Not a receiver. Receivers. Cowboys were already out receivers, plural, even before James Washington's injury. Right. Were you truly dependent upon a former third-round pick, if I am not mistaken, who at his best has had 735 yards receiving, and that was in his sophomore year. Outside of that, 200 yards, 300 yards, 200 yards. Were you truly dependent upon him for the first few games of the season to lead you to the promised land, to lead you to dominance, to lead you to a hopeful 7-0 record like you started last year? I don't think so. I believe the Cowboys were in trouble before the injury. I definitely think they are in trouble now. Joy, where do you stand?
Very rare we completely agree, Emmanuel. This is one of those times.
Good day, Slick. It's going to be a good day when Joy Taylor and I agree on something.
My concern with the wide receiver situation in Dallas was not as severe as it is now. I agree with your point. Considering that James Washington is that significant to it, maybe we should have been more concerned going in. But obviously the conversation was centered around CeeDee Lamb. Is he going to be a number one receiver? He was the number one receiver in Dallas last year. So what's the difference? He's going to do what he already did. He had more targets. He had more yards than Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper was just a bigger name, the veteran, and being paid. So CeeDee Lamb is not my question in this situation. And it is obviously very important to have a number one receiver. It is the rest of the units that is terrifying in Dallas. They have no depth. When Cedric Wilson left for Miami, everyone was like, Cedric Wilson. Way too big a deal about it. No, depth matters at this position.
Right.
It's very important. You saw in the Super Bowl how important it was for the Rams. Odell goes down. What do they have? They have depth. Depth at a position that is so crucial to offense, which is where all of the rules benefits, where all of the money is going, is very important. What the Cowboys do in reaction to this, I don't know. To your point about Michael Gallup, he's coming off of an ACL injury. He might not be available for the beginning of the season.
There's no guarantee that he'll be great when he comes back.
Correct. And it shouldn't be on him to be that great coming off of an ACL injury. When you have a player that you want to contribute significantly coming off of an injury like that, you want to ease them in. So he's not going to be in camp. He's not going to be going through all this offseason stuff and gearing up for the season. Even when he does come back, he is going to have a window where he needs to gear up. So you're looking at the rest of the depth chart. I mean, this is a lot of really young guys, a lot of undrafted free agents, which obviously can develop into something. Jerry has said that they're not going to go out and get a veteran guy. Right. Whatever happens, I'm not putting this on Dak Prescott, though.
Oh.
Dak isn't the one who decided to put this.
Just have to throw that in there
I'm just saying it. He's not the GM.
I'll get back to that.
He's not the GM. He doesn't put together the roster. What quarterback would you put in this situation and expect to carry them to a Super Bowl?
Slick, I apologize because I can't let such blasphemy be uttered and not address it. Right? It would be negligent of me to try to conduct this conversation, let Joy utter such blasphemous, rhetoric around the Cowboys and not address it. Here is why I must put some of this on Dak Prescott, and then we will pivot. The Cowboys traded Amari Cooper because Amari Cooper was making $20 million. That seems like a lot, particularly when you're paying Dak Prescott $75 million in one season. So you have to get rid of Amari Cooper because you're paying him a lot of money, seemingly. Right. But you realize he was making the third most amount of money as a receiver when he was traded. Now, he's only making the 12th. Jerry Jones guessed wrong, but he had to guess in the first place, Joy, because of Dak Prescott. So I don't think it is directly on Dak Prescott. Absolutely not. But you only had to get rid of Amari Cooper, your number 2 receiver, your 3-time Pro Bowl receiver in his first 4 years. You only had to get rid of him once you paid Dak Prescott. But, Slick, I do not want to deviate you from where you were going, Mike.
Well, and to add to that, and it's probably why Jerry Jones is saying, I'm not going to go get another veteran receiver like an OBJ because I've already spent my money. I mean, to me, that is a money-saving position. I like who we've got. Let the young guys eat. We'll see where we go. But to answer the question, no, they're not in trouble because James Washington, to your point, wasn't a game changer. If you believed that the Dallas Cowboys were capable of winning the division, which I don't know that you guys have diverted from that, they're capable of winning the division. They're still capable of winning the division. They come out of the gate and they have to play the Bengals, they have to play the Rams, they have to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have a very difficult schedule. James Washington's injury doesn't change the possibility of them losing coming out of the gate early. It still comes down to what are they going to be overall for the season. And that's not going to rely on James Washington. It was always about when Michael Gallup going to get back. Can CeeDee Lamb take another step?
Yeah.
Can Dak Prescott be the same quarterback without Amari Cooper? And can that defense be as opportunistic as it was last year? So to suggest that they are in trouble because what? Because they lost James Washington? Like, no, I can't look at that and say they're in trouble because of that. Now, I'm not drinking the Dallas Cowboys Kool-Aid. I believe you and I came to an agreement.
You're a Kool-Aid drinker?
That we drank it.
Thank you for a Kool-Aid drinker.
Yeah.
Extra sugar?
Oh, yeah. And but not the purple, the orange.
I respect it. I'm a red guy myself.
I respect that. You and I agreed. We drank the Kool-Aid a year ago when it came to the Cowboys, and
I got
we're
very
not going to do that again. And we are not doing that this year. But can they win the division? Is anything changed because of the James Washington injury?
But
I
think that we're putting too much on James Washington now. It's not about him having to come in and be a volume receiver. It's about the depth. The depth, Michael Gallup, James Washington. CeeDee Lamb's the only healthy Cowboys receiver to ever catch a touchdown pass in the NFL. So it's not about James Washington having to be something other than what he is. If he just is what he is, they need that. That is what I'm saying here. It's not about him having to be more than that.
Fair. Let me be blunt. Let me be blunt and tell the Cowboys and Cowboys fans something that I don't know if anybody else is going to tell them. The Cowboys are setting their stars up for failure. We're acting like this James Washington injury is going to be a huge detriment to the Cowboys. But James Washington had 200 yards, 735 yards, 392 yards, 285 yards in his 4 seasons in Pittsburgh. So why did we build him up that high? We're acting like Michael Gallup is supposed to be Calvin Johnson in his prime. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Michael Gallup has 1,000-yard season, maybe 2. I'm not looking at my notes directly. I believe he has 1,000-yard season. He was a third-round pick. I was covering the Dallas Cowboys when he was drafted. He is an overachieving third-round pick. Once again, he's not Randy Moss in his prime. I love me some CeeDee Lamb. I loved him in Oklahoma. But remember what happened to Juju Smith when he had to go from being a number 2 to a number 1. Because you can be a number 1 statistically, but not be a true number 1. Remember what happened to Calvin Ridley when he had to go from being a number 2 to a number 1. Now, I fervently believe CeeDee Lamb is more talented than Juju. I believe that CeeDee Lamb is more talented than Calvin Ridley. But Juju Smith-Schuster had 1,600 yards, y'all. You got to be talented to get 1,600 yards. So I think the Cowboys are setting up James Washington for failure. I think they're setting up Michael Gallup for failure. I think they're setting up CeeDee Lamb for failure. And if you think that Dalton Schultz is going to come out here and be Travis Kelce, you're setting Dalton Schultz up for failure. So we have to remove the star from reality. The reality is James Washington is a solid receiver, a 3rd or 4th caliber receiver. Michael Gallup is a good receiver, a decent number 2, but I love him as a number 3.